Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. All right, hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I'm so excited to introduce you to Dave Lundgren. We've only met recently. We had an extended coffee together, and I was late to that meeting. I still feel like I'm always usually early, and then he's a military guy, so I was like, oh gosh, doggone it. But anyway, but we had a great conversation. We had met through a mutual friend, and it was just delightful to hear ideas. And then he's a Kansas City guy. And attended a church for a while that's pastored by a friend of mine here in Kansas City as well, Roy Moran.
Yeah, great man.
So we kind of had some other, and I'm sure if we went down that road, we'd have a lot of common friends. Yeah. But he has a new book coming out. I think this is actually a pre-copy, right?
One of those.
And it's got The Answer, but then the is crossed out, and he has An Answer, and then the subtitle, Where Science and Spirituality Converge in the Truth. So I'm a huge fan of learning from both science and spirituality and from all the great faith traditions. And so when Dave and I kind of jumped into some of this stuff, I was, oh, cool, this is awesome. So I was so grateful. And he gave me a copy. I've read through it and really enjoyed some. So, but let's first start, Dave, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And
appreciate the invite.
Yeah, let's first start just with a little of your story, kind of where you were born. And I want to give people just a quick teaser, but then we're going to dive into this. But Dave has served as a military chaplain, business consultant, coach, spiritual guide. He has a master's in family therapy. He's hung out with Tony Robbins and done speaking, motivational speaking. The wealth of things you've done in your 54 years is amazing to me. And so, so let's jump in. Give us a little bit of your background, where you were born, how you grew up, what was your family faith background?
Yeah, born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. So the obvious next question, okay, so you were Mormon, which is true, yes. Born and raised Mormon. The whole thing went on a Mormon mission at age 19. And actually when I went into the military, it was endorsed by the Mormon church. So I was active Mormon up until about 2000 when I left the military. Probably going to dive into that, but no longer active in that faith, but was born and raised in that culture. My great-great-grandfather goes way back to, he was friends with Joseph Smith. So on my mom's line, several generations. So
have you visited the stuff in and around Liberty, Missouri? Yeah. Some of the houses that are there, some of the history, because he hung out in Liberty for a while.
He did the Liberty Jail. Yep. Yeah, and the whole area. If you come from the Mormon background, Jackson County, Missouri, there's a lot about New Jerusalem and even Nauvoo. So I visited all those
the RLDS think that's where Jesus is coming back, right here in Independence,
Missouri.
LDS
too. Yeah,
and they have the same idea? Okay.
That all came from Joseph Smith's revelation. So the RLDS and the LDS both believe that.
That's the touch point.
Yep.
They got the spire there. Fascinating. So where did you go to college?
I got my bachelor's from BYU and then my master's from Kansas State.
Okay, and so when you went to BYU, That's where you went there, like 1 year, and then did the 2-year mission thing, or?
I did. I went, well, first semester I got kicked out for partying. But I went back, graduated. But yeah, I did one semester, went on my mission, came back and graduated from BYU, and then went to Kansas State, which is where I got introduced to the chaplaincy, because I never considered being a chaplain, but yeah.
Where did you go on your Mormon mission trip?
Argentina.
Oh, wow.
Southern part of Argentina. Beautiful country.
Oh, my
amazing
gosh.
experience.
Huh.
Yeah. Really cool.
How many people did you go with? Like a team?
Yeah, so you have one companion that you're assigned to. So you have one, and that changes throughout the 2 years. So you have different companions. But in any given mission, you probably have a couple hundred missionaries, and you have one mission president. But at any given time, you've got one person you're hanging out with, your companion.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, 19. My youngest is 19, and I look back, I'm like, that's fascinating to go from Salt Lake City, Utah, upper middle class to, my first assignment in southern Argentina, dirt floors, like it was third world, and it was an eye-opening,
Wow.
it was a beautiful experience.
What a beautiful country, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, amazing country.
So so in college, then you signed up with the military?
Yeah, so I had, like a good Mormon, got married, BYU, we were doing the dutiful thing, and actually got accepted to BYU and Kansas State. Kansas State was my backup to go into marriage and family therapy, which is what I got my degree in, because I was going to go on and get a PhD. But this is actually one of those pivotal moments in life when I made a decision that was completely illogical, but followed my gut, or what I would say the spirit, or whatever you want to call that. Because I'd already been accepted to BYU, that made all the sense. I had a sponsorship or a scholarship, but we came out here because my wife is from Kansas City just to visit K-State. And if you've ever driven out to Manhattan, Kansas, beautiful, the Little Apple, it's flat, right? And I'm from Utah, and I'm like, oh, this is crap. This is horrible and desolate. And then you drop down in, and I get goosebumps as I talk about it. You drop down into that beautiful little valley, and I'm like, I just stopped. I'm like, whoa, I'm supposed to be here. I have no idea why. And again, I call them God bumps or goosebumps. It's confirmation, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be here. I don't know why, but everything about this place resonates. And hindsight's 2020. So at the time it was like, okay, I had no idea. I had no job. I didn't have a scholarship. It made no logical sense to go to K-State. But in hindsight, that's where I met the chaplains and came into the chaplaincy. So that's why I ended up going to Kansas State, because I just followed my gut and then the impression. So I was going to go on and get my PhD. I wanted to teach. But we had a second kid. I was young, poor, and I was just kind of done with school. And being raised Mormon, I had no idea Mormons even had chaplains, right? Because that's kind of a Protestant thing. But the Army sends chaplains to Kansas State because I have a great school in family therapy. So I met a guy who was a Mormon and happened to be a chaplain. I'm like, what the heck? I never knew about this. And he just slowly was planting the seed, like, dude, you'd be great at this. And so at the time I'm 26. I'm like, I could leave here and be a captain in the Army, make $50,000 and not have to be in school. And it felt right. And so I left and went straight into the Army from there without any prior military thought or experience about doing that. And chose the Army because I figured that ministry would be more suitable to my type of just a young dude being out among the troops versus like the Air Force. Because I'm like, the Air Force is a better branch, I thought. But I wasn't really the stand-up and preacher type. I wasn't raised in that kind of background. So that's why I ended up going in the Army.
And where were you stationed at that?
Fort Riley, because I wanted to be at Fort Riley because my wife's family was in Kansas City. And nobody was volunteering to go to Fort Riley. So we ended up at Fort Riley. But that was very short-lived. So we had 2 kids. And I was done. I was perfectly happy with 2 kids, but my wife wanted to try for a third, which we did. We're in the military now. We got insurance. Hey, we had 2 beautiful girls, and she wanted to try for a boy. As soon as we found out she was pregnant, the doctor was like, you have a serious heart condition, to my wife. He's like, and she's like, I've always had a murmur. He's like, no. You have a serious heart condition. You've got congenital heart defect. You need to get an abortion. You're going to die. The baby's going to die. And so almost immediately she was put on bed rest. Once we found out she was pregnant, 8 to 10 weeks. And she was on bed rest until Hope, our daughter, was more extracted than even born. It was really was a miracle that she was even born. And she was born at 24 weeks. She's 1 pound 6 ounces, and that was the age of viability. I mean, this was 1998. Babies didn't live at 23 weeks.
Right.
And the doctors several times told us there's a 0% chance mom's going to live and baby's going to live. There's a 50% chance one of you lives. So it was an amazing, really was a miracle. We named her Hope. And Jen, my wife at the time, she's like, I'm not getting an abortion. Even though, even inside of the Mormon culture, if the mother's health is a risk, like you can get it and the church doesn't even poo-poo that. She was like, I'm not doing it. So all that being said, we got a compassionate reassignment over to Fort Leavenworth.
Okay.
So she was on bed rest. The Army was an amazing organization that helped us. I ended up moving over to Fort Leavenworth. Hope was born. It was a miracle. And we had a lot of family help in Kansas City. So I ended up spending most of my time at the prison at Leavenworth, which is fascinating history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I've only been I've been on the property, but I haven't like gone into, any of the maximum security stuff or anything.
Leavenworth's beautiful post.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was...
Well, and plus, I think still like most of the officers spend at least a year in Leavenworth. Is that right?
Yeah, so you have the USDB, the prison, and then there is the command and central. So you have the higher end officers that are doing really well. It's their command school. So it's a mix of you're either in the prison or you're one of the top echelon.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
I almost had it seemed like at least one officer when they were stationed in Leavenworth one or two or three would find my church. And so over a course of almost 30 years when I was at Vineyard Church, I almost always
15,
had
20 minutes,
one or two or three Army officers that were hanging out with us.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what was your step out of chaplaincy that led to, kind of a crisis in your life? Like, help us get to that point that kind of then began to take you into this direction of your book.
Yeah, so the direction, I'll kind of jump back and forth, but the beginnings of it really did start during even being raised inside of the religion I was raised, going to Argentina and seeing my challenges that I had with religion weren't just a Mormon thing. Oh, it's a Catholic thing. Then actually being at the Leavenworth prison, as a chaplain, your responsibility legally, the only reason the chaplains exist is to give religious rights to everybody. So while I'm in the prison, I'm responsible for everything from Muslim, Mormon. There's a Native American sweat lodge. There's a Jewish synagogue. And I participated in all of that. So it started opening me up to, I'm feeling God, what I would call this perfect source of love now, inside of all of these services. And that opened me up quite a bit. So that's a little bit of the backstory. Mm-hmm. But as I went through divorce with my first wife, I went into the coaching world, this Tony Robbins world, the seminars and all that kind of thing. But I really didn't truly surrender until about 6 years ago when I had this experience, literally sitting on the beach in Hawaii with my wife at the time. I look down and I see an Uber receipt or an Uber notification that she's leaving the island. Not just leaving the island, getting ready to leave the marriage, never to talk to me again. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I find myself?
You flew to Hawaii with your wife.
On vacation.
To go on vacation together.
Yes.
Wow.
And all that being said, that was, for the first time, even though I'd had a master's degree, even though I'd been a chaplain in the Army, even though I'd been around the coaching space and done a lot of that, I truly hadn't really surrendered until that moment. And that was a moment I'm like, all right, how do I find myself here? Right. Already been divorced before, I've got the master's, all this stuff. How in the world did I find myself here? And that question led me to seeking for an answer for myself. I wasn't looking to write a book. I certainly wasn't looking to coach or help anyone else. I was looking to crawl into a deep, dark hole. But I finally surrendered, raised my hand, and sought help. And the help that I sought, I finally did a deep, deep dive on my own stuff at a very deep emotional and spiritual level. And a lot of that went back to when I was young, I had a near-death experience. And the interpretation of that near-death experience inside of the culture that I was in.
So can you...
Okay.
Describe that near-death experience just a little bit for us.
Sure.
And then jump into how that influenced this moment. But
well, I was
because I had I've had a couple of chaplains on here, and then one of my friends who had a near-death experience, in his 40s. But then I've had a couple of chaplains on here, so I've talked about near-death experiences on the podcast a few times. So yeah,
I mean,
how old were you?
I was 6, and I remember distinctly, just my body leaving. I had a bunk bed with my brother, and
What caused it?
I was sick. I mean, I was sick.
Just
It wasn't
super.
Yeah, it wasn't any kind of massive anything other than I was just sick. And I saw people. My parents had been divorced, so my stepdad was raising me, but I was close to my biological father. But people that I had met in this life, my biological's father's best friend died in Vietnam. My stepdad's dad had died in a car accident. Like, I met those men and came back and had messages from my fathers. Hey, Neil, your friend, he's okay. Dad, your dad, he's okay. And so I had these experiences.
At 6.
That's
pretty intense for a 6-year-old man.
And there was even more that I, talked about on a personal level with people. But, there's a council. I met a lot of people, did a lot of things that, but the important thing I think that's germane to this was and my mom did a great job. Like, I came back the next day, I'm like, hey Mom, why did my spirit leave my body? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, last night. I start to describe it. She did a really good job. She pulled out a cassette tape. This is mid-70s, 76, 77, and just listened. She just started asking me questions, and started listening to that. This little 6-year-old trying to describe this experience and transcribed it, which I'm appreciative she did that. But the interpretation of that inside of that culture was, I toggled between kind of being a spiritual narcissist and feeling this heavy, heavy weight of like, I will never be worthy. So inside of that culture, my experience is it's already kind of a culture that you kind of have to earn it. And a very common human experience is we never really feel worthy, right? Mm-hmm, and so I had that at a very intense level, because how can I be worthy of this experience? And I was told, you will be a Mormon prophet. So at a very young age, I felt this like spiritual, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to live up to that?
Wow.
And so I was carrying a lot of that. Well, if I just get married young, if I get the master's, if I, become a chaplain in the Army, if I just check all the boxes, then I can feel worthy. I finally let go of all that, did that deep spiritual work, had a gentleman named Kevin who got me back to that shame and that all of that stuff, and helped adult Dave at 48 go back and unpack some of that. And literally within, I remember distinctly, he calls it RAMP, Rapid Accelerated Mind Patterning. It was kind of a light hypnosis thing, but it was doing inner child work. But I remember within 1 hour, like feeling different, like, oh my gosh, I feel connected again to love at a different level than I'd ever felt. And that was finally the deep spiritual work that I did to reconnect to what I would call God, or a perfect source of love. And then from that, it's like, okay, this is different. I feel great. And then some other experiences led me to like, well, dude, you've been through a lot. You might want to share some of these ideas and things you've learned. So that's a very quick synopsis.
Yeah, so much there. So in the book, you kind of dive pretty quickly into your thesis, which revolves around a term that you coined, loveness, Loveness, loveness. So after you had this, whatever you want to, what term do you put on that experience that you had in Hawaii?
A wake-up call.
Okay, there we go. So after you had this wake-up call, which you also use Dark Night of the Soul too.
And now they call it the Dark Night of the Ego. But yeah, it was my Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah.
Dark Night of the Ego.
I like that, Dark Night of the Ego.
Yeah, Jill Strom, a local friend, doctor, she's like, there's no Dark Night of the Soul, there's a Dark Night of the Ego. And that's what it was.
I like that. That's good. So, so give us how the overview of those two, how you came with that word and the overview, and then I want to dive into some specifics.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I I had that, awakening experience, like, okay, now I feel connected, and oh my gosh, I felt just different. I just felt different. And so Roy Moran, I was attending Shoal Creek, which is a non-denominational church, kind of a low church. And I was post-Hawaii because the marriage and my ego and my identity was so wrapped up into being an entrepreneur and having this beautiful wife and Facebook, all that stuff. But I had retracted, like, everybody's like, you guys, hold on. You went on vacation in Hawaii, you got divorced. What the hell is going on? Yeah. So I'd become a little bit of a hermit. I was doing my deep work, reading a lot of books. So I hadn't even been to church in a while. But I remember one morning I woke up and I had an intense, if you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, that beginning scene where he's walking through the cemetery and before the beach scene, and he's walking through and just remembering all of his friends that had died, it was me walking through the cemetery, but it was like the cemetery of my life and all the mistakes and all the guilt and shame and all the crap that I'd been through. And I woke up from that dream just like sweating. Like it was one of those dreams where you just feel all that emotion. And I woke up in that walking through the cemetery of my life and all these landmines I'd walked through. And so it was inside of that kind of spiritual state that I was in. I walked in to Shoal Creek and, they play movies and stuff. And Saving Private Ryan was the movie that was playing.
Oh, interesting.
And I get emotional as I think about it. And I just literally stopped and I was like, okay, I'm not a smart man, but I get it. There's something here. And God just literally said, I haven't brought you this far just to bring you this far. And I didn't even go into church. I walked around, I left and went home and just started to okay, what do I do with all this? And so it was from that state that it was like, what do I do with the landmines I've walked through? How do I help other people? If you've been through hell, just keep walking. But also if you found a bucket of water, there's value, I believe, in turning around and saying, hey, don't step on that line. Here's a bucket of water. And because I'd been through so much, that's when it came to me to okay, let's write a book around it. And I never wanted to write a book, but here was what was on my mind is okay, I have the masters, I have all this theory and stuff, but if there are universal laws and principles that apply to anybody and everybody, what are they? And if I can anchor myself in those, there could be value. And so it was with that thought that I started to look for whether you're on the left or the right politically, whether you're a man, woman, regardless, atheist, religious person, or somebody spiritual, are there laws that apply to everybody? And I'm like, one of those is love. So every atheist that I know, and I've got family members who are atheists, they know love, right? They understand that emotion and frequency of love. So an atheist understands love. On the far right, all these religions that are killing each other in the name of God and all this kind of stuff, even every religion, though, would give at least one characteristic of God as love. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, religious or spiritual people, everybody understands love. And so in my observation and experience, love, agape, Christ-like love, is a universal principle that exists in every dimension. And I'm like, is there anything else? Oneness was the other one that came up in my studies and stuff. In fact, I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and I was writing this book, and he walked right past me, and he said, well, oneness is the highest law. I'm like, oh, shit, I got it. And so I looked at that again. Okay, from a spiritual standpoint, Christ, Buddha, every spiritual master talked about oneness, right? Jesus, let them be one like you and I, Father, are one. Buddha. So I'm like, that makes sense from a spiritual standpoint. And quantum physics and science today, I could be an atheist, hardcore atheist, not believe in God. And it's very clear from quantum physics that everything is broken down into energy. And I've done this when I've spoken. I put the definition of, never been created, can't be destroyed, is inside of everything as a life force. And if you're religious, you're like, well, that's God. If you're an atheist, you're like, well, that's energy. Same thing. We're just using different words. So from a scientific standpoint, I'm like, oneness is also principles. And I'm like, okay, love and oneness, those are laws that exist. And I just combined them to be cute. Love and oneness, that kind of came to me. I'm like, that combines. And then from there, as you read in the book, okay, if that is true, if love and oneness really are universal principles, then I call it reverse proofing. Like when you do a math equation, right? You do algebra, you do it forwards and backwards, you should be able to reverse proof it. Meaning, if love and oneness are universal principles that lead to success and happiness, then the opposite of that is what's causing commotion. And I believe that to be true, separation and division. And so as you look at the political scene or the religious scene or this gender versus that gender, how do you control 8 billion people? You get these people to think these people are the wrong, and That's it. So separation and division, I believe, are the opposite of love and oneness. And so in my experience and observation, I really do believe those are success principles. And so then I go on to say, okay, if that's true, how in every aspect of your life, your body, your being, your spirituality, your relationships, and your business, how can those universal principles help you in every aspect of your life? And then how can we implement those into society if they really are universal principles? And that's the book.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, so it's interesting because in my darkest time, I felt like I was in an atheistic void, like I didn't feel God's presence. And I had read broadly enough in the world of science and evolution and everything to easily think like an atheist. And so in the darkness, it felt like an atheistic void.
Yeah.
And then coming, what the thing that is like, how do I move forward? Because I felt almost frozen in that kind of darkness and didn't really want to live. Like I was actually, passive suicide ideation. Like I didn't, I'd rather had died, I think. But the thing I just came back to was, well, I've experienced love. I know that's real. I've experienced beauty. I've experienced creativity. I just kind of thought through things that I know are real, and so I'm just going to choose to press it, even if there's no God. This is where my brain was like, I'm going to press into love and beauty and creativity and those kind of things. And then if I call those things God, well, then you can argue with me about the semantics. But and my atheist friends will say, well, that's semantics. And I'm saying, yeah, but that's what I'm calling God, right? So it's like...
And I love that, because every atheist I know, when I have conversations, like open-minded atheists, I'm like, okay, and I like your analogy of darkness. So let's say it's dark, right? It's just dark. We walk outside. The sun's still shining, but I have my eyes closed. I have my sunglasses on. The sun is still there. Sun didn't move, but I'm in darkness, right? But I can still take a breath, right? There's a breath happening, or if I go to sleep at night, something's keeping me alive. And I ask my atheist friends, what do you call that? Sometimes they're, well, it's nature. Okay, cool. Sometimes they say science. Sometimes they say energy. To me, it doesn't matter. Put a capital on it. So put a capital E, call it energy, out of deference to it's giving you life, it's giving you breath, and then call it whatever you want, because it doesn't care. It doesn't. It just wants us to experience that. And atheists are like, okay, cool. As long as I can call it science, call it science. Yeah. And it's when we get caught up in this, the hardcore Christian, you can't call it science. Well, there's how many different names even inside the Bible for God?
You're right.
And my experience and observation is God doesn't care. And God is an experience. And it is that experience of love and beauty and all those things you're talking about. And it's that inner experience. And the proof that we're all feeling that is we can all take a breath right now. Like we can literally pause, take a breath, close my eyes, and like, okay, whatever that is, right? And breath is sacred. Yahweh, right? A lot of people get into that. Like, whatever you want to call that, just experience it, lean into it, feel that beauty. And to me, then there is that common ground that I can go sit with an atheist in nature, and we can put a capital N on it, and we can experience nature together and love and beauty, and not fight about semantics.
Yeah. When you dive into the science side, I want to just talk about that for a moment. I think if I read a lot of science, but I don't pretend to be a scientist, but I love science. If I had not felt called to be a pastor when I was 16, I would have probably followed a science career, because I love that so much. And I still read science to this day. And most of the people I read are atheists in the science field, right? Yeah. But I learned from them so much. And we could both go back to what you just described. But when you look at what you're made of is basically 95% stardust. Like the stuff that the universe is made out of, you're made out of. And when you get into the quantum physics and, even with math, you can get to parallel universes, and we we haven't put that in a
sacred geometry
test
and all
tube
that.
yet. But yeah, but you can get there through mathematical equations.
Yeah.
So that this idea that everything is interconnected, and you get to that through good science and the reality of that everything is connected, thus oneness, or some kind of oneness, right?
Yeah.
Something links us all together.
Yeah. And it's underlying all of it.
And so I have a quote. I was just at a retreat last week in just outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in the Tetons, and I was hanging out with a bunch of process theologians, which I think most of them would actually like your loveness, and that definitely in that whole, because this was we had scientists there, like real scientists, and then we had real PhD theologians. But one of my friends, Brian McLaren, said this quote, and I want to read it to you and see what you think as we think about this concept. But it says, he says, you actually mentioned this in your book, but he says, I used to think that things were real and change was an event that happened. So like a rock, well, that's real, or, whatever. But if you back that rock up into the mountain that it started from, and if you back it, even over long periods of time, that rock it changes, right? So he says, I used to think that things were real and that change was an event that happened. Now I think that change is real and things are events that happen.
No, I like that. When even our perception, again, from a purely scientific standpoint, we're looking at whatever it is, a microphone or that book, and we think it's solid.
Yeah.
But it's our eyes filling in the gaps, because 99% of this is all empty space. And we can't deal with it, and we feel like this is real because we're pushing on it, but it's an electromagnetic response to our touching, but it is emptiness, it's nothingness.
Well, and it's even waves, right?
Yeah.
Energy wave, like you mentioned this in your book, like that everything is like a wave almost.
And from again, I'm not a scientist either.
Wave, yeah, but
yeah, and then you start, and it only becomes solid by observation. And so why, to me, that's fascinating, because that, to me, is the act of creation, the Word becoming flesh. So from a purely scientific standpoint, scientists have observed, okay, all it is fluctuations of energy, and it only becomes a particle when you observe it. Which would be fascinating, because if we walked over here and didn't observe, would this still be solid? Like you can really go down some interesting rabbit holes. But if things only become solid through the act of observation, to me, that is where science and spirituality are converging in the truth of, okay, the Word became flesh. How did nothingness or energy or this life force or this God essence become material? Well, that is the act of creation, through focus and through observation. And so thoughts become things, right? If we think about things long enough, that is how you turn nothingness into something.
Yeah.
And so we are creators. You can put a small C on it if you want, if it sounds too audacious to put a big C on it, but that is the act of creation.
Yeah, and it like with my process theology crowd, everything is being co-created moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. It's a constant act.
Yep.
Everything is in a constant act of becoming and co-creating.
It is.
Yeah.
And our observation of, we can be observing the exact same event, but our focus and the meaning we attach to that determines it. So we watch an accident happen. You interpret it one way, I may interpret it a different way. Somebody says something on a political channel. Whatever meaning and focus we attach to that, we're observing the same exact thing, but we're having a different experience. And so two people living in the exact same world, watching the exact same event, are having two radically different experiences based on our focus and the meaning we attach to it.
Yeah. So I want to dive into a theological issue.
Sure.
That you, even in your conservative background as a Mormon, I think would be similar to mine as a Southern Baptist, my background, and to conservative Catholics as well. One of the things that the Christians have taught, of all different varieties, since Augustine, is that when that little baby is born, that little baby is bound for hell. Dirty, rotten little sinner. You know, like what new parent holds a new baby and goes, oh my God, what a dirty, rotten, horrible sinner. I mean, for me, every time, I don't have kids, but I've been at hospitals where a lot of my family members have had kids, and it's one of the reasons why I'm going, oh my God, there's a God, you know, or something. This is amazing, right?
Yeah.
But in conservative theology, it's a theology of separation, where, and they call it original sin, and you bring this up in your book. What's crazy is that if you just read the Bible, the first 2 chapters are really original blessing, not original sin. Yeah, and it's this beauty of creation and co-creation and multiplication and things creating and co-creating, and everything's good and beautiful. You're made in the image and likeness of God. There's that sense of dignity and worth, right? So in what's happened is that so many conservative theology, they don't start with Genesis 1 and 2. They start with Genesis 3, which is a story of shame, right? Humans do feel shame. We do feel separated. We can feel separated. That's an experience. I felt horrible shame in my darkest moment and hated myself, right?
Sure. But were you separate, or was it a false sense of separation?
Exactly. And this loveness that you pointed to, I think that there's a beautiful book I read by Matthew Fox, who's a Catholic, by the way, who wrote a book called Original Blessing, and he basically tackles this idea of how deceptive or how misleading original sin can be.
I think it's the greatest lie that's ever been told.
I think so too, because if you teach somebody that they're dirty, rotten, if you cut them off from their own wisdom, from their own intuition, from their own sense of connectedness with the world, with nature, with God, with love, with everything that is, and the reality of everything that is, like you said, this love and this interconnected oneness.
Yeah.
Now you can't trust yourself. You have to trust an outside authority. And
you have to go through that authority to get what's already yours.
Exactly.
And that's why it's false doctrine.
Yeah, and I think that Jesus showed us the way of connection, of oneness, of both death and resurrection, the way of forgiveness, to unite us to the oneness of the Father, right? So I see salvation as wholeness, and restoring us to a sense of our sacred oneness with God and everything around us, right? So anyway,
I agree 100%.
So you tackle that often.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in Mormon theology, would they have taught that you were a dirty, rotten sinner at birth?
No, that's a great question.
That needed salvation?
They look at the fall as a fall forward. So they don't really believe in original sin, but they do believe that you have to go through a religion to get to God. And so if we can grab your cup. So if this is source, this is love, God, whatever, right? What you're describing, like, why would they do that? Why would that teaching come in hundreds of years after Jesus was around, or Yeshua, right? And here's why. Because now here's organized religion and there's governments. And they both of these institutions have done this. So here's this religious institution, which I'm a big fan of religion if the rites, the rituals, the practices are underneath you, supporting you in what is already yours. So whatever your religious practices are, your spiritual practices, if it's reminding you of what is already yours, this love that's inside of you, that's beautiful. But the very moment that you described, well, I'm over here and I have to go through this to get what's already mine. Now it's false doctrine. Well, I don't have to pay penance to get to life. It's already there. Same thing with governments. Inalienable rights. So as long as a government is underneath us, supporting us in what is already our rights, it's wonderful. But there's a worship of government. Typically from the far left, they tend to worship, well, my rights come from this institution. No. So my belief is those institutions, when they're done right, which is about 1% of the time, they're supporting you in what is already yours. But this idea of original sin is false doctrine, because now all of a sudden it's something outside of me versus no, it's already innate, it's in me, it's this love, and now I'm seeking something external, and I got to go through something versus those religious rites and practices can be beautiful as long as it's stirring something inside of me. So I'm not anti-religion. I'm just pointing out that most of the time, these religions, the one I came from, Catholic, that tell you have to go through us. Well, no. Just simply breathing tells you that's not true.
It becomes a form of control and manipulation.
For sure.
And
then when the church and state line up, which they have for thousands of years,
right.
then both these institutions are
it's toxic.
Controlling 8 billion people.
Well, it's toxic, and you end up with Christians killing Christians in the name of Jesus, is what happened in the Reformation. So,
yeah.
Well, so fascinating stuff. So, we still get banged up. We have experiences that we hurt others, we hurt ourselves, we can hurt the planet, and we forgiveness and healing from shame and all these things are vital to bring us back to what is really ours in the first place. Our birthright, is, if you want to say, created in the image of God, or the sense of dignity and humanity, is at the core of, I think, healing and coming back to that awareness that we are one and we're not separated.
For sure.
You mentioned, because you mentioned the studies. I want to, you take these ideas and apply them to almost every realm of life, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to dive into the relational realm a little bit. Sure. You quoted Dr. Gottman's research multiple times in the book.
Yeah.
And I remember when that research came out, and I found it fascinating because he was pretty sure if he could interview a couple long enough, he could pretty much predict whether they were going to break up or not.
Yeah.
And the 4 horsemen
of the apocalypse.
Yeah. That Dr. Gottman talks about, that you mentioned in your book, that are some of the key things. If he detects these things, it's probably gonna, if they're not healed or dealt with,
high predictor of divorce.
They're gonna,
Yep.
One of them was defensiveness. Second one, stonewalling. Third, criticism, and fourth, contempt.
Yep.
So, talk about those 4 things. How we get healed from those, because these are pretty much, most humans, when they interact with other humans, do these things, right? Yeah. They get defensive, they stonewall, they criticize, they contempt, right?
Yeah.
How do we relationally apply this loveness idea so that we can actually have healthy relationships that are supportive and energizing of each other versus tearing each other down all the time?
It's a great question. And another book that I've written called Beyond Mindset, the premise of that book is that most psychology and religion and self-help is dealing with symptoms. And until you go all the way upstream and resolve the root cause, you're going to just deal with symptoms, right? And you're always putting out these little fires. And so that is an example of that. So my marriage is falling apart. So I'm like, how do I save my marriage? Okay, Gottman, I got a master's in family therapy. So all of those are symptoms, right? And I would suggest every single time somebody walks into a counselor's office or a pastor's office or a therapist's office, they're talking about symptoms. So addiction, obesity, poverty, anxiety, anger, these are symptoms. The core root issue is the same issue. And once I realized that, I'm like, okay, so if I can solve my marriage, it's going to be the same answer to solving my business, to solving my body, to solving these things. So that's a very long-winded answer to say every one of those are symptoms of a spiritual thing. Contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Those are symptoms, and John Gottman he's very scientific in his approach. He hooked people up to electrodes, he's observed people, thousands of people, and he can predict with great accuracy, if you have those things, you're going to get a divorce. My whole premise is, but why do those things exist? Mm-hmm. Those are spiritual issues. Why do I criticize somebody else? Well, I criticize somebody else because I'm feeling like shit inside of myself. That's a spiritual issue. Once I resolve that, then I come from a place of observation, right? And like even forgiveness isn't necessary if I'm trying to understand, looking through God's eyes. Oh, and pick a horrible example, a violent act, rape, right? That's a horrible act. Why would somebody do that to somebody else, much less criticize them? Well, they're coming from a place of they're seeking love, which is the original first prime mover of everything, but they're doing it in a perverse way, right? Through control or manipulation or force. Same thing with criticism. They've disconnected from this love and oneness. If I'm connected here and I'm deeply rooted in that and I'm in a good place, I'm not criticizing you, nor am I getting defensive. Because even if you jump at me and I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm in a good centered place, like, oh, okay. And you think about the spiritual masters from Buddha, Jeshua, anybody in your life that you know is deeply rooted and centered, they're just like, okay, cool, you're coming at me. I'm going to deal with that. So that's my whole point in this book, is that I love John Gottman, I love his work, but those four horsemen of the apocalypse are still symptoms. And the way you resolve those symptoms, be aware of them. Like, oh, I've got these in my marriage, what do I do? You go to love and oneness. You go to the higher, to the root cause of all of it. And the cool thing is the root cause, which is disconnection from source and disconnection from love because of shame or because of childhood trauma or whatever it is, you do that, your body's going to be in better shape. Your business is going to do better. Your relationships are going to do better. That's the whole premise of the book, is that get there and then everything downstream. Because I have a lot of clients that come to me, oh, my business is failing. Okay, cool. I have to honor and respect, and there's a moral and legal obligation to deal with that symptom. But I already know their business is failing because it's a spiritual and emotional thing. Why is their business failing? Because they're addicted to chaos, and because there are a lot of different reasons for it. But those are all symptoms. And so whenever I talk to somebody, I always am thinking about, well, this is a symptom. This isn't the root cause. I want to get to that root cause, which is disconnection from source, not feeling loved, not feeling worthy, shame. And my master's degree is in family therapy, and I got very good at like dealing with what's inside the room. It's all behavioral focused. And I was very anti-poo-pooed. Oh, people talk about childhood trauma. I'm like, that's stupid. I'm not controlled by my past. But as I dove in and understood from a scientific standpoint, the subconscious mind and how your mind, under the age of 10, you're in this theta state and you're wide open. And I used to think childhood trauma meant you had to be raped by your priest, right? Everything had to be big T trauma. Well, that's me looking at it from an adult perspective. What I didn't realize is a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old may have a kid that's teasing them on the playground, and that weighs on them in such a massive way because their parents are also going through divorce, and all of a sudden that little kid feels unworthy or something else is happening. So there's small T trauma that happens to people. And maybe it was your pastor that said something, or maybe you heard something in church that you're a dirty, rotten scoundrel, an original sin, whatever that is. That's the kind of stuff that people need to go back and unpack. And every single massively successful person I know, from Tony Robbins to Dean, anybody you know, Wayne Dyer, they had that hole, that God-shaped hole. And we try and fill that with everything except for God, and it only works temporarily. We can distract ourselves with money, sex, success, but at some point you've got to get back to that love and oneness and be like, okay, and then all those other things are beautiful. Sex and having a good time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's celebrating life, enjoying this garden we've been given to run around and enjoy. I believe that's why we're here. But that's a celebration of life versus I'm looking for those things to fill this God-shaped hole inside of me. And so those are powerful and they're great indicators, but they're symptoms. They're not the root cause of a divorce. And if we Googled right now, what are the top 10 reasons for divorce? We would get symptoms. Money, kids, sex, symptoms, 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 symptoms. Those are symptoms. What's the root cause of divorce? Well, it's the same root cause of why you're out of shape. It's the same root cause why your business is failing, because you've disconnected to this perfect source of love.
These things are so interesting. You know, like if I think back on, you know, my marriage that was 37 years, you know, some of these things were definitely there. I did this 2-year training in mindful meditation, and one of the things that they bring out over and over again is the most ancient part of our brain called the amygdala. It's the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. It's really the source of PTSD, trauma, because it's an evolutionary function of the reptilian brain, and
To protect you.
It's for our survival. It's always scanning the horizon of our experience and trying to find things that might hurt us or harm us or kill us.
Yep.
And then when something does happen that is traumatic, that felt like it was going to, it stores it at a really deep emotional level, right? Mm-hmm. And then it spends the rest of its life searching for similar triggers to save us again, right? And so we have this negativity bias is what evolutionarily we have. Like negative things stick like Velcro. Yep. Positive things slip off pretty easily, right? We actually have to press into gratitude and love and these things
because your brain isn't wired for it.
Right,
your brain is wired to protect you.
So as I've been teaching meditation, I'm working with spiritual refugees, people who have exited churches for various reasons. I call it the double whammy now, because what I've realized is that we not only have this evolutionary negative bias, but then we have theology of original sin that says you're a dirty, rotten sinner, and the people that grow up in that, like particularly Catholics and Southern Baptists, because there's so many of them, Catholics being the largest Christian denomination, Southern Baptists being the largest Protestant denomination. We have a ton, that creates this harsh inner critic of ourselves, right? So we're always beating the shit out of ourselves emotionally, and then is it any wonder that as we're beating ourselves up that we project that outward, this shadow self, right? We get defensive easily, we stonewall, we criticize, we can, and what as a therapist or as a human or as a coach or director or guide, how do we heal that deep shame inside ourselves, that inner critic, and then that negativity bias? It's there. We come by it honestly, right?
No, and everything you described is real, because our brains are wired that way, and life experiences and our brains are there to protect us. So the answer is, getting back to love and oneness. Okay, well, how do you do that?
Yeah. How do we do that on a day-to-day or and obviously therapy is great for people. All these things are.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you found most helpful in healing those kinds of inner wounds or inner turmoil, whatever you want to call it?
It's a great question. And so even let's take it from a purely scientific standpoint, even if you weren't, it didn't believe in God, we can look at the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind is developed. So looking at it from a purely scientific standpoint, okay, well, how do I rewire my subconscious mind? Bruce Lipton's taught me a lot. There's only 4 ways to do that. Repetitive, you just keep repeating over and over and over.
Almost like a mantra kind of thing or something like that, yeah.
Or the first 20 minutes in the morning and the last 20 minutes at night, that's sacred time because your brain is in theta state. So just like when you were under the age of 10, all these things sink into our subconscious because our brains are wide open, right? Even the Bible, be like a child, be open-minded. So that's one of the ways you retrain your subconscious mind is through either hypnosis. You can get in there and retrain your subconscious mind. You give yourself, when your subconscious mind is wide open, and first thing in the morning, last thing at night when you're dozing off, feed it. Listen to things. What you pay attention to, you're retraining your subconscious mind. So if it's purely scientific and nothing to do with spirituality, it's all about retraining your subconscious mind. And for me, hypnotherapy is a modality I use because you can go in there and you can, in 1 hour, and I have many testimonials of people like, I got more out of 1 hour than 10 hours of talk therapy. Because talk therapy is all about your conscious mind.
Sure.
And the subconscious mind is running the show. Like right now, can you feel that your butt on that seat? Well, you can now that I mentioned it. Mm-hmm. What about your heartbeat? Okay, now that I mentioned it. Mm-hmm. But you weren't thinking about it because your subconscious mind is running the show. And 95% of what we're experiencing is your subconscious mind, which is why it's so powerful to go and rewire that, because most of that is set by the age of 10, 95% of your subconscious mind. So going back to heal that inner child and this shame issue, which has no place with God and love and all of that. So that's a quick answer when it comes to a purely scientific. To me, that's also a spiritual. You go on from a spiritual perspective, and I'm going to do hypnotherapy with you, or maybe you do plant medicine and you reconnect to love at another dimension. But from a spiritual standpoint, I see that as very deep spiritual work as well. Now, I went back and healed that inner child who thought he was a piece of shit, but he really wasn't. He was just taught that, and he had a horrible, abusive parent. I got to go back and heal that and get that kid back to his natural state, which is love. To me, that's a spiritual thing as well. So however you look at it from a purely scientific or spiritual, it's that inner work to get somebody back to their natural state, which is love and connection to source. That's what you got to do. So there's a lot of modalities. The modalities that do it in an hour are typically like hypnotherapy, plant medicine, or you could have, people have amazing experiences, even health-wise. Spontaneous remission.
Mindful meditation has been a tool that has helped a lot of people as well.
Dude, meditation is a daily, absolute, like meditation was witchcraft to me growing up.
Yeah, right.
But it is absolutely like part of my daily, I have to meditate to stay centered and grounded on a daily basis. So there's things that can shift life for you very quickly to unpack that dark night of the soul. But from a daily practice, out of the 15 different modalities that I believe in, meditation, without question, by far, is number one, because it takes you inside. And you look at Yeshua, I got to get away. I got to go be with the Father. I got to go inside. He would go off and meditate.
Yeah.
Because he had to find that inner connectedness to Abba or Father or Source.
Yeah. One of the things I experienced in my darkest days, I got into AA because I hadn't been a lifelong drinker, but I'd done Xanax and alcohol for sleep every night for 2.5 years. Got addicted to those. So coming out of that, I went, and then I behaved in ways that I was really ashamed of. I felt buried in self-hatred and shame and darkness. And one of my therapists, said, you just have to share your shame with somebody who loves you and loves you and loves you, right? So
that's the antidote.
Yeah, and even when I didn't sense God, like I felt like that atheistic void when I would go to an AA meeting and everybody would get really vulnerable about their shame or weaknesses.
Yeah.
But in that spirit of supporting each other, that vulnerability linked us in love. It's a kind of a crazy, but that's how I felt God was in those moments when I linked up with other human beings who, in our most vulnerable, embarrassing things, that we
unconditional love.
Yeah, we loved each other and supported each other in the midst of that, and so
And you look at Yeshua, the Master. So many examples of the person that could have cast a stone didn't.
Yeah.
Right? In the midst of all the judgment, in the midst of all that, what was his message? What was his life? Love.
Yeah.
Love.
That's the way.
That is the way.
Is love, yeah.
In the original church, that's what they call it. They weren't even Christians. It was the way.
That's right.
And it was follow me, this is the way.
This is love.
Live the way I have. All the commandments rest on love. And that seems so simplistic.
Yeah. But that's where it's at, man.
That is. When in doubt, pour love into it.
Yeah. And it's so powerful. I think as human beings that we can through love help each other heal. Like that's a reality to oneness and to the love component. I think is that we I always like to say hurt people can hurt people, right? But healed people can heal people.
100%.
And that's
and even from a scientific, physically that happens. I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and we did meditations for healing, right?
Yes.
So however you want to look at that, we're tapping into the field, you can call it whatever you want, but healing your body physically, right? And whether you're, like I came from a tradition, we put oil on people's heads and put a blessing on them.
Yeah.
Well, what is really transmuting? It's love. It's the prayer. Like they've scientifically looked at prayer. You can tap into that love however you want to do it. Blessings, prayer, meditations, they all work. You're all tapping into love somehow. And literally you can physically heal your body through that as well. Spontaneous remissions. To me, that's tapping into the same source.
Yeah, I was just listening to a gal this past week on, the biology of the energy that our body radiates a certain amount of energy about 15 feet out, and talking about some of the dynamics of wholeness as it relates to touch and human contact and therapy.
This
and,
Zach Bush stuff that I've been, it's nature, getting even back to nature.
Yeah,
And
nature.
the healing power of,
Yeah.
and why, we can really go down some rabbit holes of why we've gotten away from that. But there is, to me, it is all tapping into love. And whether, like a Dr. Joe Dispenza uses very scientific language, but it's spiritual work and it's tapping into love. Yeah. It's meditating and learning how to tap into love, for sure.
Good stuff. Well, we are out of time. It goes by fast, doesn't it? I can always do this. So when does this come out as a fish? Because I got a pre-release, right?
You did. I wrote every word in that book. I have an editor who read it, and she's like, "Oh, can I tweak?" And so she is amazing, Lori Lynn. She's finishing it probably within the next couple weeks. The final version, that'll be that.
And do you have improved. A website that you're going to set up or anything?
Yeah, I do. So it'll be, the website is Unanswer, and this will be on Amazon. And then my website, Dave Lundgren with a dash.
Okay. Is
my main website that has all my business coaching.
Spell it out, Dave.
Lundgren.
Where's the dash, though?
At the website, it's between Dave and Lundgren.
Okay, dave-lundgren.com?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's my
and
main
then
website.
There'll also be one...
Unanswer book is the site for that book
specifically. Book. Okay.
But it'll be linked on my social and all that.
Well, there's just your life experiences are woven in and out of this, and it's quite amazing how many experiences you've had so far. And I love the way you've thought through this stuff, and I think that we have to converge science and spirituality. It's just it's the way of
they're both pointing
reality.
To the same truth.
Yeah.
I agree. Keep going upstream and you'll get to the same truth.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dave, for being on Spirituality Adventures. Good to hang out with you. And everybody, you can wait for the book to come out and jump in on it. And thanks for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures. Look forward to seeing you next time. Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.